Hi, my name is JC.
And I'm Juan. Welcome to The Couch, a podcast where real therapists talk about real things.
Please remember that while we are indeed therapists, we are not your therapist, and this podcast is intended for educational purposes only.
Mm. Today's a good day for a good day.
It is a good day to have a good day, and I'm very excited about this topic specifically.
This is one of those, I think, as you get older, right? Like there's so much emphasis, at least I feel that, on taking care of yourself and self-love and uncovering it and learning about it. Be like, oh, that's a thing? Okay. Tell me about it.
Okay, so we love self-love, okay? And let's define self-love because we've talked about self-care already, but let's talk about self-love. It's not just loving yourself. And just to put it out there, yes, some people do define self-love in the masturbatory sense, but that's not the type of self-love we're talking about today, okay? We're talking about something different. We are talking about your regard for your own happiness. That's what self love is. And the way that we practice self love can be varied and it looks different for everyone because everyone's needs are going to be different. And today we're just going to go over kind of a general or more broad overview of things that you can do to help instill yourself with more self love or to work on that relationship with yourself. Because a foundationally healthy relationship with yourself is really going to benefit you when it comes to creating other healthy and dynamic relationships in your life.
Hmm. I like to look at self-love because I think I used to struggle with like self-love, self-care, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth. And
Hmm.
as I look at it, I picture self love as I'm disconnected from me, and then I see me, and I go, all right, how am I going to treat this person? And when I hear them speak about themselves, what type of support am I going to give them? And when I hear them maybe or see them treat themselves physically, what feedback am I going to give them? How's all that going to reflect maybe love, concern, their values? What do you?
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty close to like how I am conceptualizing self love. And I love that you externalized it. Like, if I took myself out of myself and looked at me, how would I treat this person? How would I show them respect, dignity, kindness, and compassion?
Mm-hmm.
Something that self love is not, I'll go kind of in the opposite direction, is that self love is not narcissism. Self
Yeah.
love is not excessively being self focused. And humility is one thing, but self love does not come at the cost of your humility or vice versa.
Yeah.
When we talk about like loving yourself, um we're not just talking about that self-worth, self-confidence. It's also how kind are you to yourself? How do you talk to yourself? How do you continue to show up for yourself? Because something my mom says all the time is you was born by yourself and you gonna die by yourself.
Hmm.
So what she's saying in like as a translation is that you have to show up for you, number one.
Yeah.
And that's not a selfish endeavor. It's more of a self-preservation sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that a lot. It's not narcissism to show up for yourself.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think that does. There's like a gray space there, maybe where some individuals go, okay, I love myself. Always got to be positive. Keep it 100. Only good vibes. And
Hmm.
there's this space in there where if you go too far, you're you're missing a key element of self love, and that's recognizing when you're feeling something else other than great. Right? So that could
Hmm.
be that, you're feeling upset or you're feeling hurt or you're feeling frustrated and you're allowing yourself to sit with those feelings while continuing to give yourself love,
Hmm.
versus, no, I'm not going to feel that because I love myself too much. So
Hmm.
there's that space there of it's important not to reject those feelings.
When, ooh, hold on. I want to pause actually and go back to just that concept of like going through your emotions and not ignoring them. That's the type of self compassion that is required for you to be able to acknowledge other people's emotional needs.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to recognize what you need first and foremost in order to be able to express that to people. I think we talked about um in our familial relationship episode, we talked about teaching people how to treat you.
Yeah. Yep. Remember that.
And you can't teach somebody material that you're not familiar with. So, understanding what you need, knowing how you feel, let's use an example of, if you're afraid of clowns and your friend decides that they want to go to the circus and they take you with them and don't tell you that they're taking you to the circus. And now you're sitting there petrified because that's not something you disclosed to them because you didn't feel the need to disclose it, right? That's a very like kind of out there example,
Mm-hmm.
but the way that that could have been avoided was having that self-compassion to be like, you know what? Yeah, actually, my fear of clowns is a little more important than hanging out with this person.
Yeah.
So perhaps I should tell them what's actually going on a micro scale of that, you have to be willing to sit with yourself and learn more about yourself so that you can teach people how to treat you, so that you can recognize what your thresholds are. What's your threshold for annoyance?
Mm-hmm.
What is your requirements? Goodness. What are your requirements for a partner that you would like to be with long term? Do you know what type of relationship you want to have long term? And we're not saying that you got to have all the answers like right now
Yeah.
in this moment, but we are
Tell me.
saying you owe it to yourself
Yeah.
to know a little bit about yourself. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you put a not I think you put a great point out there, and self love is getting to the space where you you know how to treat yourself, and then maybe you could teach other people how to treat you. And if you think about that and you pause and you go, okay, I know how to treat myself, and now I can teach other people how to treat me. But before we get to the point of teaching other people, me teaching other people how to treat me, I need to take a step back and really evaluate, how am I treating myself? Am I being good
Hmm.
to myself? Am I honoring my boundaries? Am I being assertive? Am I creating a healthy relationship with myself, with others? Am I practicing um, healthy care for myself? All of those are components of self love. And often, what can take place is that if you grow up in an environment where your microsystem, your role models, parents, and so forth, if there's a gap there, a gap there maybe where you weren't provided with a healthy form, healthy instruction of self-love, that could lead to maybe people pleasing, that could lead to neglecting your own respect and not being assertive and not standing strong on your boundaries, which highlight your
Hmm.
values and your self-respect. It could lead to being in relationships where there's abuse taking place, yet you know you're in there, and you're not defining it as that, not because it's not abuse, but just going back to those early childhood experiences where you started to form those definitions and form those beliefs of this is what self-love is. And again, a component of that is how you treat yourself. So as you're kind of listening in, if some of those are points and it's making sense, and you're checking those boxes, it's important to know that there's so much space for work to be done, and that's a wonderful thing. So looking at, all right, let me maybe shift into whether it's a self-help book, working with a counselor, trying to begin that process of step one. What do I know about myself? What beliefs do I hold? How do I define self-love? And then seeing if those steer into that healthy category.
I love the way that you put that, that there's work to be done, and the way that you tied in those sort of like microsystems of, our childhood. Like, how do you grow up? And you should be I think it's important, rather, for people to remember and recognize that it's never too late to start working on some of these things. Like, these patterns are patterns for a reason, because they were prolonged and they showed up the most aggressively, if you would, throughout your life. But you now, as an adult, I'm assuming most of our listeners will probably be adults, but if you're not, you will one day be an adult who gets the opportunity to decide how you want to go through your life. You don't have to be stuck in this sort of state of reeling where you're like, okay, well, do I love myself? Why should I love myself? And is it selfish for me to love myself? Trick question.
Hmm.
The answer is no. It's not selfish to love yourself.
Yeah. But that's where, and I think you were discussing this on self love and narcissism. And as you're exploring this topic, your listeners, you're listening in, it can be helpful to take down some notes and really look at one category of self love and have a separate category, narcissism. And there's some bullet points there. When you think about self love, um, it steers into, yes, you're assertive about your boundaries, and maybe one of your boundaries could be like a physical boundary. You don't want people all up in your space, so you're assertive and you stand strong to it. Whereas more in that narcissism category, highlights like a strong level of selfishness. From there, that could be coming out as, showing off in a way that you're better than everybody else. So having that distinction, I think it could bring a lot of peace of mind, especially when you're engaging in practices that have to do with self love. You know, um,
Hmm.
let's say that you're doing a practice of valuing your feelings. You're like, I'm. It's okay for me to feel this way, or you're being assertive about something, and it's okay for you to do that, right? That highlights self love. But if you're lacking those definitions of the spectrum of self love and then narcissism way over there, it can lead to questioning yourself, where you go, should I be doing that? So it's helpful to have that foundation.
Hmm. I wonder how, like, Herculean of a task that can seem to some people, especially since, the word narcissist, or the concept of being a narcissist, is very lightly used in a lot of spaces. Um, what with pop psychology, which we could talk about pop psychology till the
Mm,
cows come home, but everybody on TikTok, their ex is a narcissist,
mm,
and
yeah,
you start to kind of question whether or not they understand the concept of narcissism. So let's give it like a rundown, if you would, a crash course definition of what narcissism is, just very quickly, because we know that narcissism is not self-love. So let's start there. But narcissism, just as a trait, is a selfishness, entitlement, a lack of empathy, you know,
yeah,
uh, that's more of what we're talking about. And in the event your self love starts to look that way, where it seems a bit callous towards others, or it seems like it doesn't take into consideration the people around you, that's a really good time to pause and use that tool that Juan just gave you about writing down what those differences are and what it looks like. And
yeah,
if you're working with a counselor, you can take that list to them and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. What does this look like? Because they'll have a different insight for you. They're going to have a different lens for you.
yeah. I found this, and this is from Duke Health,
Hmm.
and it's written by, I believe it's written by Dr. Rosenthal. But it had this really neat acronym that connects to narcissistic personality disorder, and I do agree. I think it's important, as you're listening in, know that there's so much information out there. So just do some cross reference. Listen and read something, and then go back and do your own research. A lot of these concepts too, in areas that you and I, JC, discussed, can be really helpful to bring back into your counseling session. Bring back into those professionals that you're working with on, hey, let's talk about self-love and let's talk about narcissism. So now you have a trained professional. They can pull out further resources, and it's there, and it's really connected to you. Often what we see on social media, it's not that it's always necessarily wrong, but it's important to look at how broad is that. Like, are they speaking to the general masses? And we have to remember that a lot of these diagnoses they can be very unique to an individual, and there's ample
Hmm.
barriers and variables that can influence a diagnosis. Like, as a fun little fact here, there's some research that goes into communities of color, and it connects to oppositional defiant disorder. So
Mm.
there was a lot of individuals, kids that were being diagnosed with ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. But this individual, and I'm forgetting her name, she did a lot of research and looked at, there was a cultural component where a lot of the individuals, I think, were more in that survival mindset, just coming from rough backgrounds. So
Hmm.
what the people were missing that, right? So that's really important to know, that you can throw out this diagnosis, like a child being defiant, being disrespectful, and saying, okay, here's a little meme that says they may have that diagnosis, but that's so broad, right? We really got to go each individual having their own unique space. So that's why it's important to have that,
Hmm.
professional next to you that you can speak privately with. The acronym that I think it's pretty helpful here with narcissistic personality disorder, it's special me. So that's two words there. And S
Hmm.
is sense of self importance. P, preoccupation with power, beauty, or success. E, entitled. C, can only be around people who are important or special. I, interpersonally exploitative for their own gain. A, arrogant. L, lack of empathy. M, must be admired. E, envious of others or believe that others are envious of them. And each of those connect to symptoms there that have to do with narcissistic personality disorder. But again, this is
Hmm.
just some information that you can utilize to move those steps forward.
Appreciate that psychoeducation there. We love a good psychoeducation, and we love a good acronym. We say like we say all of this about narcissistic personality disorder and just narcissism in general to help you determine what the difference is between them, because I think one of the things that's really integral to this concept of self-love is knowing how to love yourself, especially if you grew up with really low self-esteem, or if you grew up in spaces that were not kind to you and you didn't learn those skills of self kindness. You can find yourself at a loss as an adult for how to be kind to yourself and what sort of kindness you need to be able to show yourself. Um,
Hmm.
so, giving you this definition of narcissism is our way of helping you recognize and validate that need for um, that need for kindness, self kindness, especially.
Yeah, I'd like to continue that and kind of toss in here like a practice, and I'm going to work it from the ground up. You imagine a child growing up in a house, and the child's really having a hard time with school, in particular math. Maybe on the sports field, they're excelling. One of the top athletes. But in the math class, not so much. And the parents sit down with their child, and the child's really down and out. They're not enjoying this process, to put it, black and white terms. And the parents they're kind, they're supportive, and maybe they say things like, tell me how you feel. And right now, with doing your math homework, how are you treating yourself while you're doing your math homework? And maybe the
Mm.
child says, you know what, I think I'm stupid and something's wrong with me. And the parents, they sit there and they hold that space. They don't quickly change the subject. And they go, well, what else do you feel? Well, I feel frustrated. And, how can we help? And maybe it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I need more time. And then throughout that process, maybe the parents, give some words as far as, you know, bringing the child into the conversation. Is it okay, to be good at some things and maybe have a little more challenge in other things? And the child says, yeah. Parent goes, kind of like maybe playing football. You're very good at, running with the ball, but throwing it, what do you think about that? Yeah, I have a hard time throwing it. And then the parents
Mm,
go, so it sounds like it's okay to have certain areas that you're a bit stronger in, other ones they're just a bit more of a challenge. And the kid starts to develop this space, and the space they're developing is accepting your imperfections, right? Accepting that you're
mhm,
not perfect, and validating feelings, and challenging oneself, and valuing feelings. So this child starts to recognize all of that, and maybe even recognizing asking for help, and maybe even recognizing their strengths, right? So all of those areas have to do with self-love. And as the child gets older, right, they practice those and they harness them, and there's these little muscles that are really, really strong. So as they get older, they're able to engage in the practice of self-love. So the practice of self-love could be they accept their imperfections, they challenge themselves, they stop and hold space for what they're feeling and how they're feeling. They're comfortable with asking for help. But you can note how lacking an environment that can provide that, or one that's the opposite, where the parents, attack and are very critical of the child, or hold them to an expectation that they have to have these exceptional grades, that can lead to
mhm.
later what's a struggle with self-love, where that child feels they have to be perfect.
Listen, perfectionism is such a heavy thing to carry with you. And I think things like perfectionism, things like productivity fatigue and burnout
Yeah.
contribute with that inability to reach for yourself, to show up for yourself. And what Juan just gave you in terms of that example of the way that we help shape the self love mechanisms of like our children and the younger folk that we're with and talking to, what he just gave you is also a fantastic example of how to start with yourself.
Yes.
You
Good
know,
point.
how would you talk to your 10-year-old self? If your 10-year-old self overslept and got to work late, would you berate them for being late to school? Would you tell them that they're like stupid and lazy for not hearing their alarm? No. So why would you talk to yourself that way? And it can be such a healing experience for your inner child, and such a healing experience for you to externalize yourself, put yourself in like a 10-year-old shoes, put yourself in like, sixth grade you in your shoes, and speak to yourself with the same grace that you would provide a child. Because honestly, that gentleness isn't just reserved for childhood, it should
Hmm.
carry like all through your life. That sort of grace should follow you.
Yeah. Good point there. I'm glad you said that and really pulled it out. I think, and maybe you could speak on this from your perspective. I think sometimes there could be like almost like, man, I feel like I lost out on that, or I wish I could just rewind the clock. And I think sometimes people go through that when it comes to this conversation that you and I are having. But you're saying, hey, you know, right now is a good time to do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's
You,
empowering, right? Knowing
yeah,
that right now
continue.
you're having a good time over there.
Yeah, I am. I'm just thinking. I have
I
so
know.
much to say.
Yeah, I get that from many individuals I've worked with, where it's like this, and the pain is real of wishing you can go back, and maybe parents did it a different way, maybe experiences were a different way. But I really love that you paused that and you said, "Well, right now, let's jump on it."
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love reminding people that they're allowed to be soft with themselves. That's part of the self-love, like that self-compassion. Obviously there are going to be moments in which you have to like buckle down and be disciplined to do stuff, of course. That's just a part of life in and of itself. Yeah, you're always going to have those moments in which it's going to be more important for you to be disciplined, but being disciplined does not include treating yourself poorly. Being disciplined does not include any sort of harshness. And the idea that you can only get things done uh when you're being cruel to yourself is so unfair. It's genuinely so unfair to you as a person.
Hmm. That ties in really nicely with self love.
It does. Like, be kind to yourself. That's something that I always tell, like, people as they're leaving the office. I always tell them, have a great day, be kind to yourself, because that's the sort of reminder, right?
Yeah.
Of, yeah, you're going through some things more than likely. Like, if you're going through some things or times are tough, you're allowed to be kind to yourself. Like, take a breath. Once you start understanding that you're allowed to be kind to yourself, allowed to be gentle, allowed to feel things, it changes your perspective.
Yeah. There's maybe tying in here with the practice of self love. I'll plug in the taking time to set realistic expectations, and
Mm-hmm.
that, if you really slow down and you think on it, and you look at, okay, what expectations do I have for myself, and important within it, how do you treat yourself during that journey of the expectation?
Mm.
Are you yelling at yourself? Are you belittling yourself when you fall short? Are you realistic? What's happening? And that's really important to look at that. And sometimes it's helpful to step away. Think about a best friend, someone that you honor and love and value, and you toss whatever expectation that you hold for yourself onto them, and then you toss whatever treatment you give to yourself onto them, and then you sit with that and you say, well, would I do it the same way? And if the answer is no,
Mm.
okay, time to change things up.
Mm-hmm. Well, that could be a real moment of clarity for someone to, externalize those messages. Like, would you talk to your friends like this? Would you talk to someone you love like this? Would you belittle your spouse like this? No, then why do you talk to yourself this way?
Mm-hmm. I'll going back right to that self love. It's 8 letters if I'm doing the math right, but
You are
it's
correct.
extremely like it's deep and it's layered. It's this spider web that ties into just so many aspects of your life, interpersonal level, external, everywhere. From this term and all that it encompasses.
It is very complex and very layered. Something that I think we can round up this episode with is for people to understand that this is a skill. Self love is a skill. Yes, it's something that we all would love to have, and something that we are going to encourage you to have, especially as mental health professionals. We're going to encourage it because we understand how impactful it can be. But if you're not super great at providing yourself with that grace just yet, it is okay. This is your encouragement to continue practicing those skills. This is your encouragement to continue giving yourself space and grace to grow in love, grow in the love that you want to show yourself.
Hmm. That's a good spot to close up. You want to go? Let's take people to the personal growth challenge.
Yes, personal growth challenge. Would you like to go first or would you like me to go first?
Let's see. You go first. I went first on the last one.
All right, cool. So, my personal growth challenge for you is going to be providing yourself with like a get out of jail free card this week. So, if you spill your coffee in the morning, it's a get out of jail free card. It was an accident. It's okay. You clean it up and you don't let it ruin your day. You don't fester on it. What's that? You forgot you forgot something at work that you needed. It's okay. Give yourself some space and grace. That's what I would like for you to do for your personal growth challenge this week.
I like that one. That's a good one. Let's see. I wrote mine down. I would like for you, for your personal growth challenge, to, it's like a two here, 2-for-1 special.
Excellent.
One, on a somatic, on a physiological level and cognitive level, take inventory. Recognize what your body does and how you feel around the people in your life. And that's just pretty general. And the second part is, see when your body relaxes, when it's warm, see when it's cold, when it's tight, when the walls go up, when they go down, and then let that teach you. Is a really important element of self-love, and it's spending time around people that build you up, that support you, that love you, and then
Mm-hmm.
creating those boundaries around those spaces that are really pushing against who you are, your values, and your boundaries. And you'll start to notice that you're around certain people, and maybe you say less, maybe you're a bit more guarded, maybe you walk on eggshells, maybe they send you a text, and right away it gives you that feeling of anxiety. And each of those moments are their messages. They're telling you something, and it interconnects with self-love. And then look for those spaces that you get that message and you're excited and you can't wait to see that person respond back, or those spaces that you can say what you want and you won't be judged or attacked. Right? So let that teach you what it has to teach you, and be willing to learn, and then connect that practice into self-love.
That's so good. That's a very good personal growth challenge.
Yeah, you got a good one. We got a good one. Collective coming in here. I like today's episode. I'm a big fan. I got one of those
Yeah,
fan signs for the football stadiums of self-love.
actually, yes. Can we get like a pendant for the office that just says self love, like a big banner? We can put it in the waiting room.
I was telling Elizabeth the other day, how if you go to like big events and they have like those cutouts,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe on the outside it says like, Facebook or something, or whatever event it is, and then you go in the cutout, you take a picture and people tag it.
Yeah.
I was like, there should be one of those outside the practice that has this huge banner thing, a cutout of like self-love, and people get in there, take a picture, hashtag Santos counseling, and it's like,
Wow,
you
that's
know,
crazy how I
pushing
know
that
what
self
I'm
love.
putting up on Saturday. I'm gonna just put it in the yard. You're gonna come in and say, "What is this?" And I'll be like, "Surprise! Look at what I've done."
Hey, that'd be a cool surprise.
Fair enough. Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. It's been a lovely episode. This is always a fun time for us, and we really hope that you learned something. We hope that you got something out of it. And we're encouraging you to take these little nuggets, take the things that you hear, and see if, like, take what resonates, try to apply it to your life. And, we hope you get what you need out of these conversations that we have.
Love it. All right. Y'all have a great morning, day, evening.
Yeah. See ya.